All right, Colts fans, we are live on my personal channel for the first time in a good while here, actually. So I appreciate any of you guys tuning in. I haven't done anything really on this channel in a long time, and I will say before we start this show, I was kind of thinking about ways I could kind of do things with this channel, and the biggest thing that I kind of came up with was I know I'm not the most professional guy in Colts media. Never have been. Very candid as it is, but I wanted to have even more of a laid back approach to kind of some things on this show. So I think I called this Colts Fancast. I'm gonna have a Colts fan, a Colts guy from Twitter that I'm cool with. Maybe some guys I'm not cool with. Just bring them on here and talk some ball. And my favorite guy to bring on, one of my best friends on Twitter for a while, Brent Fatig. Finally learned his last name just by looking at the old cover. What was it, the Cover 2 podcast or whatever that you were on with Joel?
Draft Indy, maybe? Or
Oh, yeah, any of those? Yep. So I was looking through there and find your last name, found that. And dude, first time we got to meet face to face, talk some Colts, just some life bullshit, man. Just how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. I was actually just recently at a 6th grade band concert, which is why we had to do a little bit of a late start. Father of 3 in the Chicagoland area. I do get distracted sometimes for hopefully all the right reasons. So going well. Excited to be on. Thanks for having me. I think a little bit of casual fandom and less professional angles is good in the zeitgeist of Colts Twitter. So thanks for doing this, Zach. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing. I try not to take myself too seriously. I think you guys know that with me. I'm not the most serious guy, but even more of a laid back where I can kind of step away and instead of being like, oh, every single guy is kind of good. No, you can kind of chill and say some truth about some things, and we can just kind of have a laid back, fun thing. So I think I don't know if you guys can comment through Twitter here. If you guys want to leave some comments, you might have to go to my YouTube page, which would be, I think it's just Zach Hicks or something on YouTube. It's a nice little logo that my wife made. You guys can hit the subscribe button, whatever. I have to do that call to action like everyone says you're supposed to do when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, no, we're talking some Colts football, not just Colts this year. I want to do with every guest I have on when I have a Colts fan on, kind of talk about your kind of beginnings of being a Colts fan. So you said you live in Chicago now.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're from Indy though.
Yeah. So I moved to Zionsville, which is right outside of Indianapolis. And I think a lot of Colts players live in that area.
I heard it's like I don't want to. Is it like the rich area or something like that?
There's a lot of money in Zionsville.
Okay. So you're gonna have to donate some of that money that you grew up with to.
No, not my parents. I love my parents, but no. So I grew up in Zionsville from like age 9 until I went to school at Purdue, and was like very, very arbitrary Colts fan. Like we weren't home on Sundays. My mom's a church organist. We were always at church on Sundays, but like when we could watch a game, we would. And when I first got there, it was like the Harbaugh years. And then I remember them drafting Peyton and everybody talking about Peyton. Mm-hmm. And then I really just took for granted how great he was early in his career because I wasn't watching those games. And I learned about the Colts just by being a guy in Indianapolis with a bunch of friends that watched the Colts. And it was funny how tertiary it was in my life at that point and how much it's kind of become a passion because I didn't have to pay attention to the Colts to know what was going on with the team, if that makes sense. And then I graduated from Purdue, and certainly that opened up my world to be sitting around on a Sunday with my buddies drinking beers, watching Colts games. And then I moved to Chicago, and it was the 2006 season, and of course they were great. And I was super aware for the first time in my life that there were people that I would interact with regularly that didn't care about the Colts.
Yeah.
So I had to intentionally go find information. And that was Stampede Blue, trying to emerge. And I think I got on Twitter in 2008, didn't realize, but like that's a place where people can talk about sports too. I was on the Colts.com blog, doing mock drafts and stuff. And it was wild to me how much I cared about the Colts, but because it wasn't just force fed to me, I had to go seek it out. Yeah. And so the internet was lovely in that way. And it was really fun to be in Chicago that year. Obviously, my boss in my first job ever as like a professional gave everybody the Monday after the Super Bowl off if the Bears won, and only me the Monday after the Super Bowl off if the Colts won.
Oh, you probably felt so good going into that then, because Rex Grossman versus Peyton Manning. I bet you felt amazing.
I did feel confident, but then Devin Hester runs the opening kickoff.
Yeah.
But no, it was a cool time to be a Colts fan back when Peyton was around. That's for sure. And it was easy to embrace continuing being a fan, even long distance at that point. And it's kept me connected to the kind of Indianapolis like news, because I've got a lot of friends. My family's still in Zionsville, so it's cool. It feels like a connection to home.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always so much easier now with Andy asks, have I got my coffee yet? No, I do not drink coffee. That is disgusting. I drink horrible soda that is going to slowly kill me and give me kidney stones and stuff. That's what I drink. That's the drink of men right there. No, I don't drink your caffeinated dirt. I don't drink that.
Fight it as long as you can, man. I did not drink coffee until I was well into like being a dad. It just like coffee is disgusting. I don't care. I drink it, but it is out of necessity and an addiction to caffeine. It is not a good, delicious beverage. And shame on anybody who tries to perpetuate that lie.
I always say if something's an acquired taste, it doesn't taste good. And I know that from someone who drinks a good amount of beer. I had to acquire that taste. It's not a good taste, but I've acquired it. I'm not trying to go through that with other things. Anything that's an acquired taste, nah, I'm not dealing with it. But getting back to some Colts stuff here. So you get out of the Indy area, you get to watch Peyton Manning. So Peyton Manning's on. It's kind of like what the Cowboys have now. Peyton Manning's on every primetime thing. He's talked about for everyone. In front of it. I mean, I grew up in Virginia. Grew up a Washington fan. Peyton Manning was my all-time favorite player. I love Peyton Manning. Everyone loved Peyton Manning.
Yeah. Nobody didn't like him.
Yeah. He actually me and him had the same birthday. That's why I loved him as a kid.
Nice.
When you're like 5 and you find out the best player on the planet has your birthday, like, oh, so cool. And he has a big forehead just like you do. I mean, it's perfect. You see, you and I get it. We get it. We also probably both like Brian Urlacher because we were going bald when he was. But I love Peyton Manning stuff. So you have him every single day. You get to watch Colts, whatever you want. And then obviously 2011 happens. The Saints massacre happens on TV that everyone gets to see. You get Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's great for a couple years. And then, obviously everything that happened in 2019 happens. So these last couple of years, this is when I've been around covering the team since these last couple of years. So I even get more of a vibe for everything going on. But going from Peyton Manning, you have the top quarterback in football. Then you go to Andrew Luck, the super promising quarterback. How have these last couple of years been for you as a fan where it's Jacoby Brissett, it's over the hill Phillip Rivers, now it's the very volatile Carson Wentz? It's a lot harder to cheer for. There's still good years in there, but it's a lot harder to cheer for non-Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck.
It is, but it was it really stood out to me. I don't think it was like me being it wasn't me being loyal out of spite. It was me being loyal because I've truly embraced like the team when it was just super necessary and it made sense to cut Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And I still wanted to be a Colts fan and like wept at my work computer on my lunch while I watched his I've been released press conference. But like, I wasn't loyal to Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
I was loyal to the Colts. So that like crystallized for me that I was a Colts fan
Mm-hmm.
somehow more than I was a Peyton Manning fan, which is a weird dichotomy because I don't think anyone should be a Colts fan pre-Peyton Manning era and still, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just such a different. I mean, even Andrew Luck was a blast, but it's just so different still. It's just so different.
So yeah, like it wasn't hard for me to recognize I would be a loyal fan. And right, I think that's been tested over the last couple of years. I bought into Jacoby Brissett out of necessity, and I very quickly made my opinion of what Jacoby Brissett's ceiling was and tried to be honest about that as much as I liked Jacoby the guy. And I got very excited about, the prospects of a Phillip Rivers led Colts team for 2 years, like it was planned to be.
Man, same.
Shrug. And yeah, this year, probably despite all of my best advice from people that I really trust, I walked into 2021 with some optimism and genuine, belief in Frank Reich. I do still love Frank Reich. I can't stand the amount of hate that he's gotten this week. I still genuinely do like Chris Ballard, but does he have weaknesses as a guy who builds rosters with depth at all of the most important positions and pays the right assets at the right positions? ? Yeah. So, all of that being said, I don't think I'm going to give up being a Colts fan until multiple seasons worth of meaningless football start to occur. They feel relevant. And, once you actually pay a little bit of attention to the team, I think the organization stands for the right things. I think they hire the right people. Irsay, as quirky as he is a guy you can kind of get behind once you know a little bit more than what most NFL fans know about him.
Yeah. I think most of the guys are, a good portion of the guys, probably even more so than a lot of rosters, are very easy to cheer for. No matter like Darius Leonard, for instance, I'll throw him out there. And I wouldn't say this on other podcasts, I just say this here. He's a complete psychotic lunatic. He is a complete lunatic. I mean, he there's something not there in his head, but it makes him a great football player. And honestly, I don't think he's a bad guy at all. I know there's been a lot thrown around with the vaccine stuff with him, that he's not a good dude and all that because he doesn't get the vaccine. But honestly, look at what his charity does. Look at a lot of stuff he does. He's a very easy guy to root for. I think he means well. He's a really good guy. And that goes forever. I mean, Kenny Moore has all the stuff that's been like he had that Emmy award winning thing that he did with that kid with the dog. That was great. Zaire Franklin, I think, is an outstanding human being. Nyheim Hines, I talk about him all the time. I'll even say, I don't even know if I've said this publicly, but Nyheim Hines, I did an interview with him. I think when I was engaged with my now wife, and at the end, he saw my screensaver on my computer. And he was like, "Oh, is that your wife?" And I was like, "No, soon to be wife. We're getting married soon." He was like, "Oh, wish me many blessings and stuff, and on the upcoming marriage and a long life together." Like, just a really, really, like, he didn't need to do that. Just a very
genuine thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And my wife is like, that's like her favorite player now, just because of that. So it's just this Colts team is very easy to root for, despite being 3-5. And I do like what you said there, that maybe if they have a bunch of lost seasons in a row, then you'll reconsider. So you won't go through what I did as a kid. You won't just go through the whatever it was, 15 years of anguish watching sports, to getting excited for Jason Campbell going back there to be my quarterback for 3 years. That's just how it is. It's brutal. But yeah, I don't think there's any reason to lose hope. And I hate when people call Colts fans spoiled for it, which I think Colts fans are a little spoiled for sure. I think Colts, you have to be. You had Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. You have to be kind of spoiled. But,
I don't say spoiled out of spite. I say spoiled out of reality. Yeah. And that's I think I think it's good to recognize your own flaws, right? Mm-hmm. Or the things that are true about yourself. Yeah. And that it's just a perspective thing. Colts fans' perspective on what the average day-to-day experience of an NFL fan of a team is, because 20 years of it were filled with a lot of great quarterbacking.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get some questions here, and then we'll talk a little bit about Frank Reich and the conversation this week about Frank Reich and stuff, and we'll give our opinions on that. But we got Gage here, Gage Kistler on YouTube. Appreciate the subscription and the question here. But why can't Indy play 4-quarter football? I don't know. I think our boy Kanan, I think his name, how you say it, is Kanan or Keenan. Kanan, I don't know.
I would go Keenan, but I don't know. Yeah.
So I would think Keenan, but there's only one E and two N's. It goes Kennan, and I'm like, Kanan? I don't know. I don't.
Keenan, tell us, right?
Keenan, Kanan, whatever your name is. I'll have him on here probably in the next couple of weeks too. But I think he put a bunch of like EPA and stuff like that stats out that he's been getting from like Ben Baldwin and stuff. And the Colts are like the best 3rd-quarter football team in the league. And I think honestly, the 1st quarter, they're probably really good too. We saw the 4th quarter collapses though. We've seen 2nd quarter collapses like this past game. So yeah, I don't know where it kind of comes in, because I think Frank Reich's a great coach, a great play caller. I think the coaching staff overall is good. I think they have talent. Why can't they play an entire game? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So my gut reaction, and it's probably wrong, but it is my gut reaction.
This is what this podcast is for. It's for wrong gut reactions. That's what we're going for.
A bunch of terrible takes that people can call me out on all week.
Yes. This is the stupid fan podcast. This is my shot at doing a fan podcast, but not being super homer. We're just going to be very like blunt about everything.
So my gut reaction, and I think there's a little bit of merit in here. They're probably not a 4-quarter football team because they have not gelled, and that is mostly driven by the fact that they have not practiced anywhere near enough. Is there situational football that continues to like escape them? Yeah, and I've seen it work. So like clearly there are plays that Carson Wentz feels comfortable on, and that trust is being developed. But I'm sorry, it's not sustainable to get a bunch of hidden yards with pass interference calls downfield for a 17-game season.
Yeah.
So you have to actually start converting some of those, or make them meaningful plays because they set up, something else your offense is doing in the 4th quarter. I don't know that it's as easy as saying they haven't practiced enough, but I think that's part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Remember, guys, if you want to leave some comments, go to my YouTube channel. I think it's just Zach Hicks. You can see the cool little logo there in the corner. Definitely leave on there.
Cool logo.
Yeah. My wife made it. She's very, very talented.
Shout out Hannah.
Yep. I don't have the money to pay her, but one day.
You're not supposed to have to pay her.
That's true.
I don't think that's how that works.
We have a joint account. She can just take it out of there. Andy leaves a couple questions here, and he's going to actually have one that's a really good segue here too. But would this year be any different with Rivers? And I honestly was thinking about this guy. I saw earlier someone said, what would Indy's record be with Phillip Rivers as a quarterback? And I would probably say 4-4, maybe 5-3. And I only say that because I think going into that Seattle game, you had Carson Wentz with not much offseason.
Yep.
Going against a team. Yeah. Going against a team that was just a really bad matchup for him. And I pegged that game before the year started as a loss for the Colts. Now, if you give me Phillip Rivers, who already had a year in the system, and Phillip Rivers, who's so great at identifying weaknesses, pre-snap, post-snap, and reacting to pressure, I think the Colts win that game. But I don't know about the other ones. I mean, the Ravens game was tough. Rams game was tough. Maybe the first Titans game, because the Colts would have so many bounces going their way that I think with decent quarterback play, they probably win that. But I don't know. I would probably say around 4-4 or 5-3 though. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it moves the needle on more than 1 or 2 games. I'm with you, right? They're losing that Ravens game because of the missed kicks.
And Wentz made a couple great plays in that game too, like where Rivers isn't making some of those plays. Like for as much as we could say that Wentz is struggling and stuff, like there are a lot of plays in that game that Rivers is not making.
It's how I've sold myself on it, right? Yeah. And I think we heard people say it, but like, is Wentz luck? No. Is he luck like sometimes? Yeah. And like those explosive plays, or like the couple times he scrambled for, a first down, things like that definitely keep a drive going. Would Phillip be significantly better as a passer and getting them out of bad situations. Yeah, does that kind of even out over time? Probably. Here's my nuance, letting me ramble for 5 minutes.
I know I'm with you though. I think it kind of is like, I think some matchups, Rivers is probably better to have like against the Seahawks, where the Seahawks have bad corners, but they have really good exotic pass rushes and blitzes. Rivers is going to be able to identify that and attack it. Wentz, not so much. And the result was, I think, 5 sacks in week 1, a couple misses down the field. But then maybe that Texans game that we just had, I mean, Rivers probably beats them because of the Texans. But do we have the 20 yards per completion? Probably not. I mean, and a couple of those throws that Wentz made in there are probably up there among the best in the NFL for anybody this year, not just for the Colts or whatever. So I think
arguably Wentz has probably played more downs than Rivers would have too. That offensive line the first couple of weeks was really rough, man.
Yeah,
Naeem Hines would have a lot more yards.
That's dude, yeah,
I can say confidently, right?
That's true. Andy says, being a Colts fan for 15 years, there's a little anguish. I think your guys' anguish though comes from having the top player in football for 10 years or whatever and only winning 1 Super Bowl. My anguish as a Washington fan growing up came from, who's going to start, Glenn Beck or old Rex Grossman? Or not Glenn Beck, John Beck. That was his name. John Beck. I always got him mixed up.
Hired by the Jets.
Yeah, John Beck. You know what? He actually works for Adam Dado too with 3D QB. He ghosted me a couple times when I tried to reach out to him, but it's fine. We're cool with that. Andy has a question that's going to get a good segue, and then Nick and Landon will get to your guys' questions here in a few. I do appreciate you guys leaving those questions there, and same with yours, JD. But Andy says, so you have alluded to Frank being a great play caller. Do you think he struggles with situational calling? It depends on the situation to me. I think he is one of the best in the entire league at not only knowing when to go for it on 4th down, but also drawing up plays for those 4th downs. I mean, the Colts, like at the beginning of this past game, they were, I think, 8 for 8 on their last 8 from 4th down or something like that until Wentz missed that one that everyone's kind of talking about right now on 4th and 3. But the Colts were like 8 for their last 8 on 4th down. And, on the first drive, they converted 2, which led to a touchdown. I think he is, I'm a psychotic, aggressive guy when it comes to offensive play because I feel like you just need to score points. So Frank Reich's my perfect kind of guy when it comes to that. And analytics back him up that he's one of the top 5 most successful ones when it comes to 4th down calls. He's one of the top guys when it comes to the go situations. So I think those situations, he's great. I think his 2-minute drills, he plays for the field goal a little bit too much sometimes, where he's content drawing up screens and 2-minute drills and dump offs to running backs a little too often. And I think the one thing I think is I want to say is actually Josh Wilson who's brought this up a couple times, but I think the situational thing that I struggle most with when it comes to Reich is he does love to do his tendency breakers, but he does go to them a little too much sometimes to break tendency. Like he's so focused on breaking tendency that he will kind of go away from what can work, So for instance, this past game, even though the Colts did score 4 touchdowns on, I think 7 plays within the 10-yard line, they were all passes outside of 1, I think, which is fine. You scored, but maybe run the ball once within the 4-yard line or something like that, So I think there are some situations that he does struggle because I don't think he's like Sean McVay type of offensive play caller. But I think overall, I think he's a net positive when it comes to this stuff. What do you think?
Oh, couldn't agree more. I think I'd even lean farther toward just answering that question. No, yeah. Like I think he's excellent in comparison to everybody else in the NFL. Is he in the top 10? I think easily. Maybe somebody tell me I'm an idiot for thinking that, but this week became the microcosm of did Frank's aggressive calls work out, and did Wentz make really boneheaded mistakes at the absolute wrong times? The other thing I would take into consideration on this question specifically is this idea that Wentz is actually checking out of
Yes.
some of Frank's plays, which I'm all for putting trust in your quarterback.
For sure.
I'm all for, like, if you've got an intelligent quarterback, we got to build their confidence that they can recognize that stuff. But that's actually reflecting Frank in a way that most people aren't sitting around debating on a what is it, Tuesday night.
Yeah, and a good thing to add with that here would be what Jeremy put. Our boy from Canada here, Jeremy Stevenson, one of my favorite guys. Well, one of the main reasons why I'm on Colts Twitter. Him and I met a couple years ago doing like those mock draft things that people do. We followed each other, and we've been friends since. But is it true that if you don't run the ball at least once every 4 downs, you automatically forfeit the game? That's kind of what a lot of this discourse has been this week. Jeremy obviously puts that in a sarcastic way, but like, it's been like, why aren't we giving Jonathan Taylor the ball? Why aren't we now, for some context, for some nuance, this is why you're on the show here, Brent. This is a perfect week for you. Jonathan Taylor's 5th among all running backs in the NFL in touches this year. This past game, he had 16. I think he had 16 carries. I think he had 5 catches as well. So I think it was like 21 touches. Now, yes, Wentz threw the ball, I think 51 times. Reich did say after the game there were 6 times that Wentz on either RPOs or whatever called out of it. So you drop that down to about 45, right? Then you have the kill calls that he didn't really talk about. Reich didn't go into detail on kill calls, but you could hear them on the screen a couple times, like the screen to Hines at the end of the first half was a kill call. It was a kill from Wentz. He killed it and called the screen, and it was a quick tackle. So you have those. You have the 3 holding calls that were called on the Colts. And also, when you get those holding calls, you're in 1st and 20. Do you guys want him running it on 1st and 20? So if you take all that into account, Reich probably called it around 40 to 20 when it comes to pass to carry to Jonathan Taylor. And then, when you're in 2-minute drills, you're always throwing. When you're at the end of games, you're always throwing. So it's like, it was probably pretty even. I think for the most part, it was a pretty even call. And the thing is, I put this stat out too, that if you factor in those holding calls, when the Colts called a run this week, it was 22 calls or 21 calls, where it was for 42 yards gained, and that's not on the running backs. It's more on the line than anything. But if you're a play caller, you've called a run 21 times, you're only gaining a total of 42 yards. Even though your pass game is averaging 4 yards an attempt, passing is more efficient right now, and especially when you factor in the pass interference calls that the Colts are getting at such a crazy rate. So
unsustainable clip. Yeah,
it's not going to sustain at all. But I don't know. For me, when I'm seeing all this discourse this week, why didn't Taylor get the ball more? Don't get me wrong. I think every single play should go to Taylor or Hines. I mean, I've always been that guy. But I don't understand that this is the takeaway from this game. I don't understand that Reich didn't get the ball to Taylor, where it's like, yes, there were probably some more opportunities he could have got the ball to him, but for the most part, I just don't think that was an issue.
Yep. I would generally agree. It was a big opportunity, right, for the game to probably even out if those holding calls would have not impacted the end stat sheet, right? Yeah. And our guy Kyle Rodriguez, Colts off _ Kyle on Twitter, tweeted out something about how the Colts threw the ball on 3 plays more than what would have been expected. Down in distance. And I think that speaks exactly to the point you're talking about. It was the holding calls that kind of dictated the hand, and all of those lost yards, right, kind of counted against in a double factor against trying to commit to the run. Yeah,
exactly. So while I won't say this was a great game call by Frank Reich, I'm not saying that this was a masterclass type of game. I don't know. I watched this game 3 or 4 times on all 22. I don't see the takeaway that Reich was at fault for this loss.
No.
For me, and I say this as someone who I literally did a show with Mark Schofield the day before this game, or 2 days before this game, talking about how we're both getting there on Carson Wentz and how we're both getting excited about Carson Wentz and how he's doing a lot of good things. But watching this game, honestly, I thought the defense played well. I think a lot of the skill position guys played well. The O-line played well. The play calling was good. I really think this game comes down to your quarterback just drop the ball.
Yep.
And the best evidence was when he could have threw it at Mo Alley Cox's feet at the end of regulation, and he switches hands and tries to make a play. And what happened there really, like, and I've seen a lot of beat writers talk about this. What really happened on that play was Wentz was going to eat it. He was going to throw it at Noelle Cox's feet. But then he remembered he had another option with Hines going out the other way. He tried to get back to the option, and then he looked up and a defender hit him. And he switched hands and tried to get it to Hines still. And it's just Carson Wentz. It is Carson Wentz at the fullest. He, instead of just eating the play like he should have, he tried to make more happen, and the Colts got bit. And they went down and scored, and then overtime, I don't have an explanation for that one. That one was just terrible. He was just rattled at that point. But
living on a prayer. The one thing I didn't see really talked about, and I don't know how, like, quarterbacks' minds have to just be ultra quick, right?
Yep.
If it were me in that situation and I'm already in the end zone, right? And I think there's a chance I'm going to be taking a safety. Do I have a fraction of a second to say, if I take a safety, they're getting 2 points and the ball, right?
People say that. Everyone's saying, oh, that's a big brain moment from Carson Wentz for not taking the safety. I'm like, no, dude, he couldn't even read that Harold Landry was going to take away the screen. You really think he was thinking about the safety? Like, come on. That is
giving him too much credit. Okay.
Dude, he couldn't even form that thought in the half second that he had to, like, come on. Like, don't get me wrong. Again, I think overall, this year, Carson Wentz has been a very fun, volatile ride. And I think he's won some games for them. He probably did enough to win that Ravens game. If the defense doesn't collapse down the stretch. He played great. He honestly went out there and played good enough football to beat the Ravens.
Yep.
And that's, coming off of a couple bad games, a really awful game against the Titans earlier in the year. He did great in that game. Played some really good football in that monsoon that we saw last week. But he came out in this game, got rattled early, and just dropped the ball.
Here's a narrative for you. Think about that 49ers game. Do you remember how many balls he threw right at defenders that they just didn't catch?
Yeah.
And none of us really got that grumpy about it. That was not a talking point the rest of the week because of the result. They won.
Yep. Always.
If the Colts would have won that Titans game, would anybody be complaining about Frank Reich? Would anyone really be complaining about Wentz? Probably those of us that are trying to make everybody realize it's not that easy, right?
Yeah, like let's do scenario here, because Jeremy asked again, how do we feel about going for 2 versus playing for the tie in overtime, and do coaches consider feelings, possible backlash too much? I actually like what Reich said in his post game about this. He said that he did consider going for 2, but he had already used up like all of his pass plays and like looks that he like. Basically, they had so many plays within the 10-yard line in that game that a lot of his looks and stuff that he was going to do, the Titans kind of already had seen. So there was nothing that he was going to be able to pull. Like, he didn't feel confident enough about pulling out a different look there, but he was considering it.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. So for me, yes, go for it. I'm a psycho. I don't want to go to overtime. I don't want the coin toss to decide my game.
Exactly.
Even though the Colts won the coin toss, but I'm a psycho. I would go for it. But let's just play devil's advocate here. Let's say the Colts do go for it, and Jonathan Taylor runs it in. The Colts win. Are we talking about the left-handed interception today? No, we're not.
And it was like week 3, week 4, something like that. Frank Reich's first year coaching, he did go for 2, if I remember correctly, right at the end of the game to try and avoid overtime, and everybody second guessed him against the Texans. That's kind of what I remember.
Was that? I think that was where they were on their own 40 in overtime, and they had 4.
Or was it going for 4? It was going for it on 4th down.
Yeah,
right.
So they were on their own 40, and it was week 6, and they were, I want to say they were 1-4, or
they had lost a bunch. Yeah,
maybe they were 2-4 at this point, because they started 2-5 that year, I think. But yeah, they were like, it was like 4th and 5 on their own 40, and they threw a slant to Chester Rogers,
current Titan.
Yeah, and it bounced off his hands. I think it was tight coverage, but it bounced off his hands, and the Texans got 10 yards and kicked the game-winning field goal. I mean, the backlash after that game was insane. And then the psychos like me were like, this was great news. He's going to be aggressive. I love it. I'm all for it. But yeah, it's kind of like that. If it works, say they convert that, Chester Rogers catches it, gets 10 yards or whatever, and then they go down and kick the game-winning field goal. Everyone's talking about this genius performance, Frank Reich. But then the other side, if it doesn't work, then we're all bashing him. That's just kind of the push-pull. And I think going for 2, I like Jeremy kind of asked here, is possible backlash a little too much? I don't think Frank Reich cares about the backlash.
Thank God.
He's psychotic.
Thank God
He's psychotic. I love it. He's got the Darius Leonard. He's psycho. I love it. You got to be a psycho to play this game. You're taking car crashes to your head every single play. You got to be a psycho to be good with this stuff. And he's completely that. I would have said go for 2, but I got his explanation there about why he didn't.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, good. But they're too busy. Everyone's too busy writing about why Frank Reich didn't run the ball enough instead of actually talking about that. But yeah, like Jeremy says, if they score on 2-point conversion or they score in overtime, Wentz bounce back. And honestly, I'd probably be saying the same thing. I'd be saying the same thing. It's great for clicks. I would have believed it myself too. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of all of our rant about this past week. It's just, I don't know. This whole week on Twitter has been crazy.
Yeah.
Beat writers all agreeing with the same thing. And this is why I'm so happy I'm not a beat guy. And I know so many people have asked me, and this isn't me trying to toot my own horn, but so many people ask me like, oh, Zach, why didn't you work for the Athletic or Indy Star or something? I'm like, dude, I don't know if I could be like that. I just don't know if I could just like roll with the same thing. Like Doyle's the opposite. He just has to always, be very opinionated.
So many G's.
And I like to have a little more nuance with what I say and do, and that's just not good for what their role are. And I'm not really a reporter type anyway. But I think they're all talented guys. Bowen is a great, really smart guy. Erickson's a really smart dude. Brower's a smart dude. But I just didn't understand some of their takeaways from this game. And I think they're kind of part of the reason. I'm not saying those guys individually. I'm just saying collectively, the Indy media is kind of a big reason why the fans have the takeaway that they have.
I agree. I mean, it's super reactionary. It's super impulsive. I don't blame it, like you're saying. I don't blame any one individual writer, but I do feel like the press box falls into groupthink. Like I've seen where 2 guys that you can tell are 3 chairs away from each other tweet out the exact same takeaway, and it's kind of like, okay, you guys are probably not giving yourself a chance to go be an independent thinker every once in a while.
Yeah, for sure. We need more fans of nuance out there is what we need.
Indeed.
We got a couple other questions here. I've been kind of skipping people to go to Jeremy's there at the bottom because they were kind of going with what we were saying. But we got Nick Minerva here. Do you see any way after next year that Indy cuts Wentz but keeps Reich? Or are they 100% tied at the hip? Still like Reich and still think Wentz has been okay this year? Just curious. And I agree with that last statement there. I like Reich a lot. I think Wentz has been okay. I was actually against the Frank Reich extension when it got announced. Not because I don't think Frank Reich is the right guy, but just because when the whole reason why you trade a first and third for a guy like Carson Wentz, who was the worst quarterback in football last year, is because of Frank Reich. I think there needs to be you need to be like straight up with Frank Reich. It's like, okay, but if this fails, it's on you. It is. And be kind of point blank about it. And I don't think, after next year is what you said there. So it's a 2-year experiment with Carson Wentz. This year, they're probably not making the playoffs. They could sneak in, but they're probably not going to go anywhere. But I think after the next year, if they have another year like this where it's, potentially not making the playoffs, I don't know if Reich survives that. I want to say he will. I love Frank Reich, and I love that extension they gave him. I think it's a good extension because I do think he's just a really strong coach. But I don't know if he survives if they miss the playoffs this year and next year with his guy at quarterback. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he survives that?
I think Irsay is unpredictable, but as an observer for 15 years or whatever it is, right? Very close observer in ways that's probably detrimental to my life. Anyway, I really do think Frank Reich, for all the reasons we just talked about, being aggressive, being modern, right? Loving offense, being the offensive play caller at a head coach position. All of those reasons tell me that keeping him around, even if Wentz doesn't work out, isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Does he get a little too faithful to his guys, and does he try to try to convince everybody that his quarterback's going to be a stud? Yeah, but
Or does he blame he blames himself too much in the post game stuff too, and the beat writers eat it up every time. He takes fault for everything, and it becomes 10 articles about why it's all his fault.
Okay, a good leader does that.
Yep.
B doesn't mean he's saying that same stuff to the quarterback in the quarterback room, and C, like, I think ultimately as the head coach, you do have to answer to that stuff.
Yeah, and everything is kind of his fault anyway at a macro level.
Very macro level, right? Yeah. So does Frank Reich survive past Wentz? I kind of hope so.
Me too.
But I also don't think it's completely obnoxious to think there is a chance that that Wentz turns into something. So yeah. I don't think the extension mattered. I don't think the extension mattered in this conversation. That's the big thing.
Yeah. And, again, Wentz has a whole nother year, and he has the rest of this year too. And I'm not out on Wentz. I think he's been fine this year. And I think there is some good things to like there. So this is not me closing the door on that for sure. Landon Oliver, how do you view the talks of division on Wentz between the coaching staff and front office? I don't buy it. I will say, Landon, that Bill Cowher is the one who started that, and it was kind of verified by Jason Spears from For the Culture. Jason Spears, I know it kind of goes back and forth between what a lot of people think about Jason Spears and the For the Culture guys, but Jason does have a very credible and legit source. I don't like to put my neck out for many people, and I'm not saying I completely agree with everything those guys say, but they do have a real source within the Colts organization. They do. So when he says that, I'm not saying I completely believe it, but I don't not believe it. And I don't see, like, Carson Wentz is a very polarizing player. like you could get 10 Colts fans all together in a room and ask them what their exact opinions are of Carson Wentz. You get 10 different answers. That's Carson Wentz. You're not going to have everyone completely on board, completely against, So when it comes to there being division between the front office and the coaching staff on him, I believe it because Carson Wentz is so polarizing.
There should be.
Yeah, there should be at this point. Yeah.
Yes. There were really smart football people still debating who was better, Russell Wilson or Andrew Luck, within the last 4 years, Zach. So football people have opinions, and they don't always agree. He has not shown himself to be a slam dunk answer for the next 10 years at quarterback. Yeah. So there should be division.
Yeah, I'm sure there was division on Jacoby Brissett, division on Phillip Rivers. Maybe a little lesser division, but maybe a little bit on Andrew Luck even.
Maybe.
Unless you have Peyton Manning, there's going to be division.
People can't forgive injuries. That's like the biggest thing I've watched happen over the last couple decades is, like, there's just people that hate someone who gets injured. And, like, whether it's their fault or not, they just hate that person.
Yeah. Pour one out for Paris Campbell there.
Indeed.
poor JV on Twitter. He's got Dio now. He has attached his fandom to a guy coming off a torn Achilles now. So we'll see how that one goes.
He attached himself to the guy that wasn't injured at all in college, and
there we go. Yeah, he's going for the injured guy now.
So just throwing darts.
JD Morris asked, "Do you think we convinced Mathis and Freeney to come out of retirement?" Well, I know Mathis is busy with non-football things.
He's still at all the games, so
yeah. I mean, he's a little busy with some cultish type stuff. He's more of a Colt fan instead of a Colts fan.
Wow.
But no, I mean, honestly, could they be much worse than what we've got right now? Probably not. I mean, I bet Freeney could get more pressures.
It does feel like Freeney could be a third down specialist still and get some stuff done. Yeah.
Probably be more explosive than someone, or maybe not more explosive, just more nuanced, I guess, and more.
He's very smart. And
I was gonna say be more explosive. But I'm like, well, Quiddy and Dio are pretty freaky, so maybe not.
Yeah.
But he'd get more pressures, I think. What should the Colts do at receiver this offseason? Hilton is definitely gone. Pascal's 50-50. But this offense needs another weapon outside of MPJ. Do you go draft or free agent? I could go either way with it. I'm not sure. It's Chris Ballard, though, so probably draft. It's probably not.
And I don't know that I blame prioritizing drafting wide receivers over vets at this point, because really, who is the last legit wide receiver one type that hit free agency other than Allen Robinson? I don't know that I can come up with that many names, Zach, because those guys get paid, and offenses in college are putting out more wide receivers than ever before. So you're probably better off spending your resources on a draft pick. And they've thrown a lot of darts at guys, and they actually have guys that are littered around the league, still kind of you contributing to some teams, etc. So I don't know that it's worth spending that much money on a different wide receiver one from a resource perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, no, for me, I think you have to chase roles now, because I think the greatest development of this entire season, the best thing to come out of 2021, if the Colts lose every game the rest of the way, the absolute best thing to come from this year, Michael Pittman Jr. is a stud. He is an absolute stud. And I am someone who I thought he was going to be a really good wide receiver too for the Colts. After last year going into the season, I said that. But I mean, holy shit. Holy shit. I mean, he is so good. He is so good. He catches everything thrown his way. He draws pass interferences, which I know it's not sustainable, but it happens. Can go short, go intermediate. He is hard to tackle after the catch. I don't think he's there as like a star yet, but like he's gonna be a star. Like he's as long as he stays healthy, he's a stud.
Yep.
And I think that helps you so much, because most teams around the league, they have their number one receiver, they have their star receivers, then they have a lot of role players around him. For Michael Pittman Jr., what you need is a guy who can take the top off of defense but still make plays. They've kind of had Ashton Dulin doing that this year, and the thing with Ashton Dulin is, yes, he has the speed and the size to get down there, but what's he going to do if the ball is actually thrown his way? Probably not catch it. He'll draw a pass interference maybe, but he's not going to catch it. They need a guy like, and this is just a guy who's about to be a free agent now. It's just not who I'm talking about, but like Deshaun Jackson type, where they can get vertical and they can actually catch it if the ball goes down there. So even if that is just a draft guy, I think Louisville has a really good one. Pittsburgh has one. I think Bama always has a speed guy like that. But
there's always that guy. There's always multiple of that guy. Yeah.
There was Darnell Mooney a couple years ago. There was Darius Slayton the year before. There's always guys like that who can win vertically, and they don't have to be all-around receivers. And I think because you have Michael Pittman Jr., you just don't need that superstar number one. You just need a guy who can complement him. And Frank Reich uses so many other positions in the pass game that you really don't need this elite altogether receiver group where you have, 2 or 3 number one receivers. You just need a guy who can complement Michael Pittman Jr. And I think a deep threat is just perfect for that, especially with Carson Wentz, who likes to throw the ball deep.
Right.
If you can open the middle of the field for Pittman Jr. and make the reads easier for Carson, I think that's what you should do with receiver. Pascal, I think if it's cheap, bring him back. Hilton, Hilton's probably gone. Honestly, Hilton might retire after this year with the way that this year is going. He's getting hurt every time he steps back on the field. But yeah, man, I just think it really just need a deep threat type of guy. That's the best thing that 2021's given us in terms of receiver is we have a lot of clarity at that position where Pittman's the guy. Pascal can be a kind of, underneath guy, but they just need the over-the-top guy to open it all up.
Pour one out for Campbell.
Pour one out for Paris Campbell. We'll do some rapid fire here before we get off, but we got Lance Williams here. Realize Wentz hasn't been great, but do you think the receiving group holds any of the blame? Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying the receiving. Besides Michael Pittman Jr., who even had a drop, but that was kind of in the sunlight. I do think the receivers deserve some blame. But I think overall, when you watch this past game, it really was Carson Wentz. It was Carson Wentz. 2 back-breaking interceptions late. There was at least 2 or 3 other really bad misses in overtime. He missed one on 4th down early in the game, missed a couple 3rd down throws that he should have made. They lost a field goal opportunity because he overthrew Ashton Dulin on a slant. It's receivers. The receiving group is not great besides Michael Pittman Jr. I'm not going to say it's a good receiving group besides him, but at the end of the day, quarterbacks kind of propel average receivers or bad receivers, and Wentz didn't do that this past game. He didn't give them many catchable passes. There was a couple of deep balls too that were pass interferences where if Wentz just throws them half a second earlier, they're probably big plays down the field or opportunities for big plays. and they just weren't given the opportunities. Now pass interference bailed it out, but that's not going to be there all year. So yeah, I do think receivers deserve some blame, but I think overall, if you watch this past game, it was definitely the Carson Wentz dud performance that kind of killed the team.
Yeah, I think I would default there, right? When your quarterback is getting PIs from underthrown balls and missing guys 5 feet over their heads, that none of that can ever be on the wide receiver. Is there maybe a timing issue still because they haven't practiced enough? So maybe there's some of that.
The one that gets me, I've seen people comment on the Ashton Doolin one on the third down saying that a real receiver catches that or something. I was like, Michael Pittman Jr. probably catches that because he's 6'5", but
that's asking a lot.
I saw it with the Dolphins game earlier when Wentz had that misset on the RPO and threw it over Pittman's head, and it did technically go off Pittman's hands, but and people were kind of saying that was catchable, but it's like, even if it's catchable, it's a hard catch to make. So It's like you're making easy plays difficult, and you're making guys extend over the middle of the field. It's hard to bring those in. So yes, should a receiver catch it? Maybe, but
I'm trying to think. I have not seen a good handful, which is kind of my arbitrary number of like super accurate, super like well placed balls. Right.
Yeah.
Most of the catches are like, ooh, that was they were able to haul it in. It wasn't like Wentz is throwing 5 yards to the right, so he helps the receiver dodge the defender that's coming in, from the safety position. I haven't seen balls like that, Zach. You watch a lot more than me, but that's what I expect out of a elite quarterback is like knowing where to place the ball so that only the receiver can catch it and leading them away from defenders so they can get yak.
Yeah. The Hilton pass against the Texans was that. But
he dropped that.
Yeah, that was
pretty. That was pretty.
Yeah. He had a whole shot to Pittman in that one too, but besides that, yeah. He's more of I actually define passers as, are they accurate or are they precise? Wentz is accurate. He's not precise. He'll get the ball in the vicinity of the receiver. Like, it won't be like there will be a couple misses a game from his footwork, but for the most part, if he's properly synced up in a line, he will get the ball to the receiver. Will it be precise? No, it won't. Most times it won't be. He'll get a couple where he will spray it in there and be pretty precise, but no, he's more accurate than precise, but you kind of take that with athletic quarterbacks. That's kind of what they typically are. But he's not really that athlete anymore. So I don't know. It's we got a couple from Nate and Nick here about some cap stuff. We got to get Kyle on here to talk about that. But what will the cap look like after this offseason? I think it's going to be like 50 to 60.
I think 55 is the number I feel like I've read some places. But.
Yeah, so once they give all of that to Chris Reed, they won't have any to go around.
Would you think about trying to do an in-season extension to him?
I would do it.
I don't know.
Why not? Right? Like, it can't be that much. Like, you're talking maybe like 2 years, $6 million, maybe 2 years, $6.5 million. Like, because he's not playing like elite football. He's playing good football, and he's almost 30. Like,
right. He's an older version of what Mark Lewinsky was when they first signed him to that first extension. So, like, yeah. I do feel like it'll be reasonable, and you think he can take over at right guard, and there's still Fries at depth, right?
Yeah, Danny Pinter at depth center.
Excuse me.
Yeah, and Pryor solid too. He could play guard or tackle. Like, I think get Reed on a cheap little deal coming back, and then maybe Fisher. I'm still kind of wishy-washy on Fisher.
Yeah, he looked really good in.
He looked good the last 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks he's looked pretty good. He had a couple gaffes this past weekend, but for the most part, he's looked good the last 2 weeks.
He didn't stand out in the sore thumb way that he had in other games, right?
Yeah. I mean, Nick Bosa beat him a couple times, and Harold Landry beat him a couple times past game. But, like, I can live with you getting beat by those guys. It's when you're getting beat by Jalen Phillips 8 times a game. It's like, dude, he's a rookie. Like, come on.
Right.
You've been doing this for 30 years. Like, come on.
Wentz holding onto the ball doesn't help that at all, right?
Yeah, that's true. Then we got a couple from Nick here. Love Ballard. I think he's one of the top GMs in the game. Also loves his approach to the game and how he's not very reactionary. But do you think he starts to change things a bit after lack of success in recent years? Probably not.
I watched the Folian years, and like every year, friends and I would talk ourselves into some high priced FA that perfectly fit some hole on defense, and it never happened.
Yep.
Ballard knows what he's doing, and he's trying to keep the money free to pay his own, and splurging on some second and third tier free agents does work out. And you don't hate the fact that you spend money on them when they don't pan out in August.
Yep. Two more. I've kept Brent a little later than I said. But we got Jonathan asking, do you think Wentz's mechanics are fixable? Go read my offseason stuff. That's apparently my expertise now. But yes, everything that he has wrong mechanically is very fixable. And we have seen a lot, like this past week was a little bit of regression. He got a little rattled. For the most part, though, I think his mechanics have been good this year, and they have not been what they were last year. So, yeah, go read through. I'm going to have a post on probably tomorrow afternoon or evening talking about his mechanics from this past week and where it kind of regressed a little bit. But, yes, overall, I do think they are fixable, and I think some things have fixed. Last and most important question before we close it off, Jeremy asked you, Brent, will you be his date on November 13th when he's when he's in Indy?
I'm so touched. Jeremy, absolutely.
Yes.
Sign me up twice.
You're gonna make the drive out there?
So yeah, there's a whole crew that's gonna meet up in Indy for the Jags game, and I could not be more excited.
Smart. The Indy Jags game, not the other one. This is the one that we win.
This one.
We don't win the other Jags game, the one that's in Jacksonville. We win this one.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'll be your date on November 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, etc.
All right, guys. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys tuning into this kind of laid back conversation. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try to do this once a week. Unlike how you're supposed to do most podcasts, it's not going to be the same day every week, just because I'm going to try to conform it with whatever my guest availability is. Brent kind of worked out here on Tuesday. But Brent, man, I really appreciate you jumping on and talking ball with me for the last hour. I mean, it's nice to finally get to see you. You look a lot like that comedian guy that I can't name right now, but you probably don't want to be told that after some of the stuff that's come out about him. But
that's another podcast. I think he kind of got a raw deal, but yeah, it's still creepy. So yeah.
All things get caught with. It's not that bad.
It's weird. It's weirder than it weird. Yeah.
What's his name? I can't think of his name. Louis C.K. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Did you consider changing up the facial hair and stuff after everything that happened?
If people don't evaluate me on my own merit instead of judging me by every other bald bearded guy,
that's true. That's true. I get all the white dudes in Hollywood. Oh, you look like the dude from You. You look like the dude from She's All That. I think Freddie Prinze Jr. is in it. You look like Charlie Cox from Daredevil. I'm like, dude, they're just black-haired white dudes with a beard and mustache. Like, that's all they are. Like, they're not.
Again, everyone is reductive. Everybody tries to see something they know and assume you are that thing, right?
Yep. Man, I appreciate you jumping on here and talking. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. I know it's the first thing I've done really on my channel here since I think the Chris Reed interview, which was back in like June. So it's been a while for this, but I want to do a lot of this kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure. You and Chris Reed, my last two interviews on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna try to have some fun stuff on here. Maybe reach out to, maybe we'll have Jeremy on in the future. We'll see, Jeremy. But if you're still watching, maybe all the way from Canada, have you jump on. Have a couple other guys from Twitter that I've known for a while. I know there's a couple, I don't even want to call them like C-list celebrities, but like D-list celebrities and stuff that follow the Colts that I'm friends with, so I can have them on and stuff. So we'll have some fun with this show. This show is going to be all about having fun. Maybe not as much into detail about games as me and Brent did, but I just know Brent watches every game and interacts with all of us on Twitter, so he knows all that kind of stuff there. But
like a sucker.
Yeah, like a complete sucker. Click on all the articles. There we go. But no, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and catch us again next week here on I gotta look at the title, Colts Fancast. That's what I called it. That's what we're gonna go with. All right. Catch me next week, guys.